Welcome everyone. My name is Wouter Slichter, working as an AI consultant for Kodify, and I've been working in conversational AI for about 8 years by now. Seen a lot of different implementations over time for small, medium, and also corporate businesses. And a lot has changed over time. So I still remember my early days when we were just building flow-based or rule-based chatbots that could just answer questions that we had designed for. Yet over time it evolved to where we are today, where we can write a prompt and have an AI answer almost every question that we would like it to answer. And even more if it hallucinates, but that's another story in itself. So what I want to share with you today in this short and powerful session, hopefully, is how we are now managing our prompts and agents in production. And I think this is interesting for most businesses, because what I've seen and what I've seen even in our small company ourselves is that everyone is able to build agents now, except building an agent that is actually going to be used by your colleagues and yourself. That's another challenge in itself. So chaos is what we often see when the agents are pushed into an audience. And one of the reasons is a lack of ownership, because if someone actually makes an agent and doesn't share what the system prompt is about, or what its goals are, or where the output comes from, or where the input data comes from, then it's very unlikely that people will start actually actively using it, because the people want to know what the answers are coming from, where they're coming from. So lack of ownership is a big reason that a lot of projects fail. And in fact, about 80 to 90% of AI projects still don't make it into production. And that's a huge amount compared to most deterministic or traditional apps. So lack of ownership is a problem. And also absent or incomplete evaluation processes. So a lot of us don't even really know how to evaluate the output of an LLM. Yeah, how do we do that? And even if we do know how to do that, there are many different ways to evaluate an output. So for example, if we take a more developer point of view, then we might see RAG-ass evaluations, which are really Python code evaluations that check if certain, for example, personal information is present in the input or output, or that the output has a correct JSON structure. That is something that a developer might think of. Whereas a more content-oriented person in a team might be thinking more of, is this bot actually answering in the tone of voice of our organization? And that is a completely different mindset. And both of these are actually important if we're doing evaluations on a single agent. And then another thing that we often see that is closely related to the issue I just mentioned is collaboration. Because everyone's learning about AI. I'm sure you are all seeing that in your own organization. So more and more people get involved into that step by step. You might start with a small innovation team, and then you roll out things into production, and you start getting more and more people on board. So you have your developers on the one end, or your data analysts, and you have your prompt engineers and subject matter experts at the other end. And how do these people actually collaborate? How do you make sure that whatever is put in on the front of the agent in terms of data and system prompts, etc., is actually correctly evaluated at the end, and then what is done with these evaluations, and how do you send them back to the front of your implementation again, so that iterations can be made on your data set and your prompts to make your agent better. We'll look into that in a bit. But first, I want to share with you a little, funny episode that happened to me when I was first working on a project that started 2 years ago. We actually didn't have any collaboration tool for prompt ops or prompt management, and we started collaborating in Google Docs. So it looked like this. We had a persona that was, in this case, an American soldier who fought during D-Day, and this was for a museum. Pretty cool project, actually. But we really didn't have any tool, so we were working together in this doc, and then I would copy and paste the prompt from this doc into the code. Well, that's, of course, at scale, this is not working. Because people might change things and you don't know who changed something or what they changed, and how to actually evaluate whether or not this new content or this new prompt is ready to be put in production. Now, I'm curious if this sounds familiar to any of you. Is anyone here in this meeting using Google Docs or some other simple text editing tool for managing your prompts, or are you doing it in a different way?
All kind of ways. I think the Google Docs probably is closest.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you might say that. So at least you are managing it, which is a good first step. But having it scattered among different tools and places would also be a challenge to manage, I guess. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, hopefully I can give you some insights on how to better do that. So prompt ops is helping us to ensure reliability and quality. For example, you don't want to see drift or tone variance or hallucination in your output. And prompt ops and versioning is actually helping you achieve that. Another thing that prompt ops takes care of is role management. So, for example, certain people might be able to only edit certain parts of a prompt instead of the whole thing, just to give an example there. Then speed and safety, that's also about versioning and being able to roll back to previous versions or test different versions alongside each other without compromising what you already have in production. Then another thing, I actually mentioned it before already, ownership across roles. So making sure that everyone gets the access rights and the ownership rights to the extent that is suitable for their role, and not any more than that. Then also governance and ethics is an important thing that prompt ops gives us, is making sure that whatever is being put into production has gone through the necessary steps, that it's auditable, and that we actually have separation of editable and locked parts for example, non-technical stakeholders. So all of these things are basically taken for granted in most of our traditional projects, but with prompt ops, it looks a little bit different with AI. One of the places where I have personally put this in practice is with the Museum Overloon, which is the prompt that I showed you before in the Word document. And we evolved towards something that was a lot more manageable, which is the org.ai platform. And this is what I want to show you a bit more about today, because this platform has been extremely helpful in our projects over the last few years. You already see here in this picture that we have a number of variants for each of these personas in this solution. So we have Ray, the soldier. We had Lena, which was in this case a child who escaped a war zone. And these are all have different prompts for example, the first conversation, the second conversation. And then we had a prompt with examples to steer the output into a certain direction. And then we had it all in 2 different languages. And with Orc AI, you can all manage this alongside each other. So let me take you to Orc AI real quick and show you an example. Can you see my screen, guys?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So in Orc AI, we can do quite a few great things with prompts. One of the things is, of course, managing the prompt itself. What you see here is a field on the right side of the screen where we have defined the system prompt for a virtual assistant for HR, right? And in this case, his name is Henry, and Henry gives answers to the employees' questions about salary and benefits. Now, we have a compare changes button here, and if I click that, then you see that we are now in this latest version, but we can also have a look at the previous version or the one before that, and we can choose whether we want to restore that or not. And this way we can keep track of all the changes that have been made by yourself and by others. Now, what we can also do here in Orc is we can use prompt snippets. So right now we have just created a bunch of text in this prompt, but we can also set up this prompt through different parts, really, variables, we could say, that together make up this prompt. For example, here I've created a snippet about the scope of the agent, which says simply, you answer questions about salary and benefits. Imagine that we add more data to the data set that this bot gets his information from, and we may want to change this, salary and benefits, and maybe also IT-related issues. Then we can save that. And if we change this to this snippet, then it will automatically fill in this snippet that I've just created. You answer questions about salary and benefits and IT-related issues, right? For example, here, we update the prompt, we save our changes, and now it is updated. And why is this useful? Well, for one, because you might have different prompts that take on different, slightly different information. And so you could have another system prompt that reuses the agent scope, but has a different target audience, or the other way around. And you can all play around with this through these snippets. But also, you might have a situation where the tone of voice is managed by your branding people, and the rest of the prompt is managed by your developers or your prompt engineer. And you could say that this prompt is then not accessible to your content people or your brand staff, whereas this snippet is available to them. So they actually can manage this part, update it, and then it will populate throughout the platform wherever this system prompt is used. Now, of course, we want to know how to evaluate a prompt, because that is so important in LLMs. So I've created a data set to have us test that. And in this data set, you see messages which holds, for example, a user message. I want to view my performance review form. Where should I click? And we also wrote a expected output, which is like the perfect output or ground through truth of this implementation. And if we put this into an org experiment, we can then run evaluations over all of these data points at once. So what does that look like? We have a task. In this case, we have created an endpoint for GPT-4o. For evaluations, you typically don't need the best model available, so it's fine to use a cheaper or slightly older model in most cases. Now, let's say the temperature should be 0.3, and we are now importing the prompt that we had just created. Where is it? Henry, where are you? There we go, Henry system prompt. We can select the version, so if we want, we can actually go back to an older version of this prompt in our experiment, or we can even have two tasks, where one task is the current version of the prompt and another task is an older version to compare the two. And then we say, okay, we want to use our prompt and the messages column in our data set to run our evaluation. Now, an important note here is that I did not create a knowledge base. So even though the questions are actually about a fictional knowledge base, you will see later that the evaluations will come out low because we don't actually have the data set connected at this point. Now, we can also run these evaluators, and org has out of the box a lot of evaluators that we can use. So for example, earlier I mentioned Ragas, which is basically Python code that runs over the output of these LLMs. And let's just put that in there. And then you'll see if we scroll to the right, we'll see that Ragas has been added as a column here. And later when we run the experiment, you will see this column populate one by one with the outcomes. Now, I've also created a custom evaluator, what we call a LLM as a judge evaluator. And it's basically running an LLM request over the output of an LLM. And this LLM request has a different system prompt, which tells it to evaluate that output in a certain way. So for example, here we have a tone of voice evaluator specifically created for this data set, which I can show you is over here. It says you are a highly experienced tone of voice evaluator, and you compare the response against the tone of voice and return a score from 0 to 100. And you see here there's a reference tone of voice, and this one we can take out. There we go. So this one is now in this experiment automatically run over the output of these LLM calls. So let's have a look and see what happens. We're running our experiment, and now one by one, org.ai is running these queries. And now, because we lacked a data set, it's actually making up the responses. But it's not too bad. I think here it says to view your performance review form under the favorites tile, you should click on performance reviews. Now, that makes total sense. Just not sure if it actually works for any company at all. But it makes sense. And we get a little overview here of the costs and latency of these LLM requests. And then we have our conciseness score. So is the answer concise in a way that it's suitable for a chat answer, right? Because if we go on a website, we might have a very long, lengthy article, but in a chat, we want to have a relatively short and concise answer. Then next to it are the outputs of our tone of voice evaluator. And you see that it will give the scores related to the output. So we can have a closer look at that. And it actually also offers an explanation. So you see that it has gone over each and every step that was in the tone of voice that we gave it in the system prompt, and then evaluates the output of the LLM accordingly. And then it comes to the value of 95 in the end. Now, another thing that we can do, which we see here, is a human in the loop rating. So we can say, okay, this is good or this is bad. And then that will also be available in a different part of the platform where we can use that human feedback to actually work on the prompts and see where the LLM went wrong. So that's a feedback loop that goes all the way from creating prompt to the LLM settings to the evaluations and then human in the loop as well. Right, that's my take for you today on prompt ops and how we are doing this in reality. Now there's some time for questions and also some discussion. Let's start with the questions. Is there anyone who has questions about this process or what I've just shown?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can go. I don't know if somebody else, but
go ahead.
My first question, like what you did is, let's say you replace the variable, for example, like with respect to some details from the other prompt. So is it like you can only replace the variable itself, or you can get this value from, let's say, the outside, like for example, file or some other systems where, you can also auto-generate it, like, because it's not every time you get the variable, like basically you want to insert some dynamic content, let's say, that's what I can say.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the org is very flexible in that way. Now, what I've shown you right now was a pre-created data set. And I think if you noticed, there were 3 columns in the data set, and the first one was empty. That was the column with inputs. So we could have used that to set some custom variables and then run the experiment multiple times over a single data point with the different inputs that you have put in the first column. But you can also run these experiments through the API, and then you, of course, have all the flexibility of custom code to run this over any inputs that you take from an outside system.
Okay. And second question is, this org.ai is like freely available to do practice? I never used, so I'm just asking. Like, is it like open? Like, you don't need to any kind of license or anything, or?
Unfortunately, no. It's an enterprise platform, and I think the pricing is reasonable, so that I think it's also attainable for medium-sized businesses. And yeah, of course, it really depends on how often you intend to use this, because I think value is added really quickly because it saves so much time, and it makes your AI applications production ready in a way that I think very few other platforms can do. So if you're interested in this way of working, then I suggest just asking for a demo, trying it out, and hopefully it will bring you so much value that you will buy it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Cheers. Now, It's already 30 minutes, so we started a bit later. Is there anyone who wants to have a discussion about prompt ops in general, or have any other questions?
Thanks a lot, Wouter. I really enjoyed the talk. I did the breakfast AI power session, so that's why I switched off the camera. But thanks for having the info.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. AI breakfast.
Same here. Thank you, Wouter.
Yeah,
And regarding a prompt, the one remark, I noticed myself. It's in the beginning. It starts quite simple, but it will soon explode if you see what the possibilities are and if you're going to change it. And when you're busy, at least that's what I'm experiencing. You find yourself at a place that you do not know what you changed before, and then these tools like Aura come in handy. Yeah, thanks a lot. Learned a lot again.
Cool. All right. Well, cheers. Thanks everyone for being here, and hope to see you again in 3 weeks. I don't know the topic yet, but promise it will be interesting. Cheers.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks. Bye bye.
Have a nice day. Bye, everyone.
Bye.